Daf Yomi, tractate Zevachim, the final daf of this tractate, Zevachim, which we started back in September. We started it back in September on Tuesday, September 15th, which was the 23rd day of Elul, 5785. What's very interesting is that we're going to be finishing it on the 23rd day of Tevet, which is today. So, which is a Monday, it's not a Tuesday, but we'll be starting the new tractate, God willing, tomorrow, Tuesday. And I like to see there's connections between like the day that you started it and the number, the date, the day of the week. So far, I don't have any connections, but I like to make note of these little details. The final daf in Zevachim, and it's actually the first time that I've learned this entire tractate. Okay, we'll start at the bottom of 119b just to start the idea. It was Boyer of Zera, Olas Bamas Yachid. With regard to the previous matter, Rabbi Zera raises a dilemma with regard to a burnt offering on a private altar. And now we're on the top of 120, and the final daf of our beloved Zevachim. And the top of Zevachim 120, with the words Sheikh Nisa Lefnim V'Hotzia Lachutz. Sheikh Nisa Lefnim V'Hotzia Lachutz, Ma'o Mimrin, and Kevanai Lekal Delam Mechitza Oy Dilma. That one brought inside and subsequently took outside. What's the halacha? So the question is, we're talking about a burnt offering on a private altar that one brought inside and subsequently took outside. What's the halacha? Does it have the status of a sacrificial item of a public altar? The Gemara clarifies the question. Do we say that once it was brought in the partition has already absorbed it, and all halachot of sacrificial items of a public altar apply, or perhaps once it returns, meaning was taken outside again, it returns to its prior status as an offering of a private altar. Lav hainu plukta de Rabbi Yosef titnan kodesh kodesh mishavet medorim v'alim bohem mimalu lo yerdu. The Gemara asks, isn't this issue a disagreement between Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef? As we learned in the Mishnah in the Ila 2a, with regard to offerings in the most sacred order, for example, sin offering or a guilt offering that were slaughtered in the south of the temple courtyard and not in the north as dictated by halacha, and are therefore disqualified. One who derives benefit from them is liable for misuse of consecrated property, and despite the fact that they should not ascend the altar, if they ascended, they shall not descend. Just one moment. Get something here. Okay, and we're back. We're back, and we're back, and we're back. We're back, and we're back, and we're back. Okay. Biboilu yardu maloshialu. And a dilemma was raised before the sages. And a dilemma was raised before the sages. If they did ascend the altar, what is the halacha with regard to ascending again? Rabbi says they shall not ascend, and Rabbi Yosef says they shall ascend. Consequently, they disagree with regard to the issue of whether or not it is unfit to be sacrificed in a consecrated area acquires the sanctity of that area, even if it's removed from there. Tiboy l'Rabba, Tiboy l'Yosef, Tiboy l'Rabba ad kan lo kamar l'Rabba. Ela b'mizbeach techazi le'im b'kadish, lo chazi le'makadish. Ava mechitza fodgav lo chazi le'kalidam. Gemara responds, the disagreements are not identical. as the dilemma can be raised according to the opinion of Rabbah. And the dilemma can be raised according to the opinion of Yosef. Okay? The Gemara elaborates. It is possible to raise the dilemma according to the opinion of Rabbah, as Rabbah says the statement. Offerings of the most sacred order that were slaughtered in the south shall not descend if they ascended. Only with regard to the altar, as the altar consecrates that which is fit for it, while it does not consecrate that which is not fit for it, but with regard to the partition of the public altar. Even though an offering that was consecrated for a private altar is not fit for that altar, the partition nevertheless absorbs the offering, and it is sacrificed there. Consequently, all the halacha to the public altar apply to that offering, even if it is taken outside. Oy dilma, lie, 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 lie. Oy dilma, maybe. I feel if Yosef had gone, what do Yosef also? Ela dechanu kanu avach aditray bekamis dinu lo oy dilma lo ishtanu teik. This would be most likely the 228th Teku in the Babylonian Talmud. Or perhaps the dilemma of the burnt offering on a private altar can be raised even according to the opinion of Yosef. Rav Yosef states his opinion here that offerings of the most sacred order that were slaughtered in the south of the temple courtyard and descended the altar shall ascend. Again, only because the altar and the offering are both located in one place, meaning the temple courtyard. But here, in Rabbi Zera's case, where the private altar and public altar are two separate places, the halachot of the public altar do not apply if the offering was taken outside the designated location. Or perhaps there is no difference in the opinions of Rabbah and Rav Yosef. In one case, are identical to their opinions. In the other, the Gemara concludes that the dilemma shall stand unresolved until the soon coming of the Messiah, the son of David. Amen. Milsav Shita le Rabbah, Chad Gisa le Yosef Chad Gisa, Boy le Rabbi Yanai. Die Beure Viana, Yehoshua les Balos Yochin. Shialu les Be'av Yodamau. Hechad Ravish Mashal Bahen. Ha'o. Lo Tibailach. Ki Tibailach, Hechad Mashal Ha'o. My Teku. Another Teku. Back-to-back Tekus. Unbelievable. This would be the 229th Teku. Okay. The Gemara notes that a matter that is obvious to Rabbah on one side, meaning that these offerings shall not ascend the altar again, and to Rav Yosef on the other side, that they shall ascend again, was raised as a dilemma by Rabbi Yana. As Rabbi Yana raises a dilemma, what is the halach with regard to the dilemmas of a burnt offering of a private altar that ascended the altar and descended? The Gemara notes, in a case where the fire has not yet taken hold of them, do not raise the dilemma, as they certainly shall not ascend again. When should you raise the dilemma? Raise it in the case where the fire has taken hold of them. What is the halacha? The Gemara concludes, the dilemma shall stand unresolved. Okay. Itma shchitas leila b'mos yachid Rav Shmuel chad amar ksheira v'chad amar psula v'kampali k'der v'nazman. Additionally, with regard to a private altar, was stated with regard to the slaughter of offerings at night on a private altar, Rav and Shmuel disagree. One says that it is valid, and one said that it is not valid. The Gemara explains that they disagree with regard to the resolution to a contradiction that was raised by Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Karayadadi, Kati, V'yamar B'gaditem, Godu, Ele Hayom Even Gedoda. Rabbi Elazar raised a contradiction between two verses. It was written in the context of Saul's war with the Philistines, And the people flew upon the spoil and took sheep and cattle and calves and slew them on the ground. And the people ate them with the blood. Then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people sin against the Lord in that they eat with the blood. And he said, You have dealt treacherously. Roll the great stone to me this day. 1 Samuel 14:32-33. That stone was made into a private altar, upon which offerings could be slaughtered and sacrificed. Evidently, Saul was particular about slaughtering offerings during the day and not at night, despite the fact that it was a private altar and not a public altar. ושכתם בזה וחרתם ולא תרצו השם לאכול עם אדם לאכול על אדם יגישו כל העם ישרו ידו לילה וישרתו שם. And immediately thereafter it is written, and Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people and say to them, Bring me here every man his ox and every man his sheep, and slay them here and eat, and sin not against the Lord in eating with the blood. And all the people brought every man his ox with him that night, and slew them there. 1 Samuel 14:34. This verse states explicitly that the slaughter took place at night, and not during the day. Good point. It's a good point, yeah. There. Okay. Marishani. Kan bechulin, kan bekochim, arbishani, kan bekochim, bama gedoyle, kan bekochim, bama gedana. Rav and Shmuel disagree with regard to the resolution of this contradiction. One sage answers that here, meaning when the slaughter took place at night, it was non-sacred animals, while there, when Saul was particular about slaughtering during the day, it was the slaughter of sacrificial animals. According to this opinion, the sacrificial service was performed only during the day, even on a private altar. And the other sage answers that both verses are referring to the slaughter offerings. Here in the verses states that Saul was particular about slaughtering during the day is referring to the sacrificial animals of a great public altar, while there, in the verse that states that the slaughter took place at night, it is referring to sacrificial animals of a small private altar. Itmar oilas b'meyachi Rav Omar ein teuna hefshet v'nituach Rav Yochanan Amar teuna hefshet v'nituach v'kama palgi ki Rav Yossi HaGlili d'Tanya Rav Yossi v'yomer ole shekrivu Yisrael b'midbar ein teuna hefshet v'nituach she'en hefshet v'nituach elam oil moed ve'elach. This reminds, I think we had this in the Avodah Zarah. We tracked it, Avodah Zarah like 54? Anyway, it was stated that with regard to the burnt offering on a private altar, Rav says it does not require flaying and cutting into pieces, while the Torah requires of a burnt offering, Leviticus 1:6, Rabbi Yochanan says it does require flaying and cutting into pieces. The Gemara explains, and they disagree with regard to the meaning of the statement of Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, as it is taught in Braita that Rabbi Yossi HaGlili says, the burnt offering that the Jewish people sacrificed in the wilderness, in Mount Sinai, before the establishment of the tabernacle, it did not require flaying and cutting to pieces, because the requirement of flaying and cutting into pieces applied only from the tent of meeting and onward, as this halakha was first taught in the tent of meeting. In one sage, Rabbi Yochanan, holds that from the tent of meeting and onward, there is a requirement of flaying and cutting to pieces. And there is no difference whether the offering is brought upon a great public altar, and there is no difference whether it is brought in a small private altar. And one sage, Rav, holds that with regard to a great public altar, yes, flaying and cutting are required, but with regard to a small private altar, they are not. Tanya Gavas Rabbi Yochanan, Devarim Shmei Mamidoyle Levavgetanu, Keren V'Kevesh V'Yisod V'Ribua, V'Bamagdoyle V'In Keren Yisod V'Kevesh V'Ribua, V'Bamagdanu, Kiyo V'Chanu, V'Bamagdoyle, V'In Kiyo V'Chanu V'Bamagdanu, Chaza V'Shok, V'Bamagdoyle, V'Chaza V'Shok V'Bamagdanu, It is taught in the Braita, in accordance to the opinion of Yochanan, what are the matters that are different between a great public altar and a small private altar? The corner of the altar, the ramp, the base of the altar, and the square shape are required in a great public altar, but the corner, the base, the ramp, and the square shape are not required in a small private altar. The basin and its base are required in the great public altar, but the basin and its base are not required in a small private altar. The breast and the thigh of a peace offering, which are given to a priest, are waved at a great public altar, but the breast and thigh are not waved at a small private altar. And there are other matters in which a great public altar is identical to a small private altar. Slaughter is required in both a great public altar and a small private altar. Flaying a burnt offering and cutting it into pieces is required in both a great public altar and a small private altar. Sprinkling the blood permits the meat to be eaten, and if at that time the priest thought of eating or sacrificing this offering outside its appropriate time, this renders the offering pigul both at a great public altar and at a small private altar. Likewise, the halacha that blemishes disqualify an offering, and the halacha that there is a limited time for eating offerings are effect at both a great public altar and a small private altar. Our notar is man atame shavim zevazeh. Following the detail of the differences between communal altar and private altar, the Mishnah teaches, but the halacha that portions of the offering left over beyond the time is permitted must be burned, and that one who eats them incurs karet, and the halacha that intend to sacrifice or partake of the offering beyond its designated time renders the offering pigul, and the prohibition against performing the sacrificial service or eating consecrated meat while ritually impure are equal in this, meaning a private altar and that of a public altar. Tanu Abanan. Minay Lasisman, Babama Katana Komodola, Amritoira, Lan, Isaref, Pigul Isaref, Ma Pigul Pasabama of Lan, Pasabama. With regard to this, the sages taught in Braita, from where is it derived that time, meaning the halacha that an offering left over beyond its designated time is disqualified. In the case of a small private altar, should be made equivalent to the halacha in the case of a great public altar. The Torah stated, an offering that was left overnight must be burned, and likewise the Torah stated that an offering that was sacrificed with the intent to consume it after its designated time must be burned. Therefore, another parallel may be drawn between them. Just as pigul is disqualified in the case of a private altar, so too an offering that was left overnight is disqualified in the case of a private altar. O klaf l'derzo, ha'amar toira, lan yisarev yot yisarev ma yotze, kashu b'ama aflan kashu b'ama b'lav kav chaymel u'b'yoifes. Or go this way and say, O kalach l'derzo, or go this way. Interesting. And it's unique language. It was sometimes unique things. Or go this way and say that because the Torah stated an offering that was left overnight must be burned, and likewise the Torah stated that an offering that leaves the temple courtyard must be burned, the following conclusion may be drawn. Just as an offering that leaves the temple courtyard is valid in the case of a private altar, because it has no set perimeter, so too an offering that was left overnight is valid in the case of a private altar, and it may therefore be concluded that the halacha of time does not apply to offerings on a private altar. The Gemara asks, and is it not an a fortiori inference in the halacha of bird offerings that, in the case of a private altar, time should render an offering disqualified. And now we turn to 120b, and the final, very short amud, just a few lines of 120b, and to complete the tractate. Ma al v'shein amun poisel behen zman poisel behen kache bama katana shemum poisel behen enodinja zman poisel behen. If bird offerings whose halachot are more lenient in that a blemish does not disqualify them, are nevertheless disqualified by time, then with regard to his sacrificial animals of a small private altar, which are disqualified by a blemish, is it not logical that they should be disqualified by time? Ma oif shikin ein hazo kosher bahen tama bebama kitana shezo kosher ba lo yehi zman psul ba Talmud lomar bezot torat Zevachim las zman bama kitano kizman bama gedoilo. The Gemara questions the inference. What is notable about bird offerings? They are notable in that a non-priest is not fit to sacrifice them. Shall you say the same with regard to offering sacrificed on a small private altar where a non-priest is fit? No. And consequently they should not be disqualified by time. Therefore, the verse states, and this is the law of the sacrifice of peace offerings, Leviticus 7:11, which equates all peace offerings to render the halacha of time with regard to a small private altar identical to the halacha of time with regard to a great public altar. Hadran alach parat chatat uslikala esechet zevachim. We shall return to you, parat chatat, and we have completed the tractate Zevachim.